letter, I'm going to point out I've got on a following page some green highlighting. And the reason I've highlighted this passage is that I want to stop and take a moment and help you understand what Rifka is trying to express, or what she's getting at in a later part of the story. There are 3 words on this page that I've highlighted in yellow for you because they may not be something with which you're familiar. The first word is moros, and that's just a shortened version of tomorrows, right? Then the other word is foreboding, and that's being used to describe the sea. A tossing sea, foreboding toil and sorrows. Okay, so there is, when we talk about something being foreboding, it's something bad is going to happen and we're waiting for it to happen, is a foreboding moment. And then finally the word ward, and that's just being, you might have heard about a ward in a hospital, and that's how that word is being used. Not to ward off something, but to describe a room or a section of the hospital. Okay, so let's begin. We begin with this quote of Pushkin: "My path is bleak, before me stretch my morrows, a tossing sea, foreboding toil and sorrows. And yet I do not wish to die, be sure. I want to live, think, suffer, and endure." And so we begin. A week later, October 7th, 1920, Ellis Island. Dear Tova, I have been here a week now. It is not so bad a place, really. I'm growing used to it. Crowds of people overfill the wards. When they first brought me here, they gave me a choice. I could sleep in a bed with another woman or by myself in a crib. I said, I'll take the crib. My feet stuck out one end, but it was better than sleeping with someone I didn't know, someone who had a disease I didn't want. Sometimes it is convenient I am small. There are so many of us here in the hospital. After 2 days, I was transferred from one ward to another. In the new ward, I got my own bed. Saul came to visit, but they sent him to the first ward and he couldn't find me. No one could find me, so they sent Saul away. Saul would have been the first familiar face in almost a year. I didn't care that it was just Saul. I would love to have seen Saul, but they sent him away. When they didn't find me, they put me in still another ward. When they did find me, they put me in still another ward. Here, a nurse has taken an interest in me. Her name is Nurse Bowen. Sometimes she takes me to her room in a building on a different part of Ellis Island. We go in a little boat to get there. I help her clean her apartment. Mostly, though, I eat candy when I'm there. She always has candy. It is not as good as Belgian chocolate, but still it tastes very good. I'm going to like her. I like going with her. I make better sense of English now. I listen to the nurses and the doctors, following them on their rounds of the wards. I have been able even to interpret a little for the Polish and Russian patients, only simple things, but the nurses and the doctors seem pleased to have me help them. There is a little Polish baby here. She has no one. Her mama died of the typhus. Because I've already had the disease, I help take care of her. She is such a beautiful little thing, with dark eyes taking up half her face and a bald head, as bald as mine. She never fusses. I hold her and rock her and sing her Yiddish lullabies. I tell her stories and recite Pushkin to her. She reminds me of the little baby on the train in Poland. I have another responsibility. In the dining hall one night, a little boy sat across from me at the table. I couldn't tell what was wrong with him, why they were keeping him in the hospital, except that he was very thin and pale, with dark circles under his eyes. I looked in those eyes and remembered something, someone, but I was too hungry to give it much thought. They serve the food. It is not bad food, and there is so much of it. Hands went every which way, passing, dishing out, spooning in. But the little boy sat, watching it all go past him. I helped myself to potatoes and meat and carrots and bread. The boy stared at my plate, but he took nothing for himself. "What's the matter with you?" I asked in Yiddish. "Why don't you eat?" He didn't answer. "Eat," I said in English. Still no answer. "Take something to eat," I said in Russian. Now he looked up at me, straight into my eyes. "Russian you understand," I said, "but not Yiddish?" Then I knew. The boy was a peasant, a Russian peasant. Here, sitting before me, Tova, was the reason we had fled our homeland. He was the reason for my being alone for so long, separated from my family, the reason I had had typhus, the reason I had lost my hair, the reason Uncle Zeb was dead and all your lives were in danger. I had him sitting in front of me in the dining hall of the hospital at Ellis Island. Okay, I have to pause here because Rifka is not speaking literally, right? This little boy is literally not the reason they left. This is a figurative way of speaking. He represents all of the discrimination and unkindness that was put upon the Jewish people in Russia. And he is, in a way, a little symbol of their suffering to Rivka. So when she says, here sitting before me was the reason we had fled our homeland, literally that boy did not cause them to flee, but the Russian peasantry did. Okay? And so this is going to continue, and I really wanted to point that out to us. All right, let me take that, and we're going to continue right here. I tried not to look at him. I did not want anything to do with him, but there he was, in front of me, a little Russian peasant. He stared at his pale hands folded in front of him at his place. Then he looked back up at me with those eyes. I remembered then. He looked like a small version of the soldier at the train station, the one with the eyes of green ice. I didn't want anything to do with him. Nothing. But no one should starve to death, Tova. Certainly not a little boy, maybe 7 years old. Is there something wrong with you that keeps you from eating? I asked in Russian. He shook his head. If you don't eat, I told him, they will send you back. He nodded. You want to go back? I asked. He nodded again, and this time tears filled his eyes. Well, just tell them you want to go back, I cried. If I go back, they will kill me. His father or his uncle, his cousin or his neighbor, they will make a pogrom and they will kill me. Crazy Russian peasant. He could stay here. He could stay here in America. There is nothing wrong with him. He could live in either place, Russia, America, and no harm would come to him. But no, he is starving himself, so they will send him back. People were eating all around us. The boy sat at his empty plate, tears rolling down his cheeks. I hated him. I hated what he stood for. I also hated to see him cry. He was just a little boy. What's your name? I asked. Ilya, he answered. His voice came out thin and high and frail. Ilya, I said, if you don't eat anything, you will grow so weak that when they do send you back, you will die before you reach home. You must eat a little. I stood up and looked for food to spoon onto his plate, but by now all the food bowls were empty. What could I do? He was just a little boy, a hungry, frightened little boy. I lifted my plate and slid some of my own food onto his dish. Now, eat, I said, or I will be hungry for nothing. He put a little piece of carrot in his mouth and chewed. Then, faster and faster, he pushed the food in. "Slow down," I said. "You'll get sick." He finished everything on his plate, so I gave him a little more. Maybe it is not very clever to feel what I felt about this Russian peasant, this enemy of my people. But Tova, he was just a little hungry boy. Taking care of him made me feel better than I had felt in a very long time. Ever since then, I have a shadow. He follows me everywhere, holding on to my skirts. He sits by me when I rock the Polish baby, though I will not let him come too close. He follows me around the buildings. He sits under my elbow at mealtime. He is always under my feet. The nurses call me the little mother. I don't mind so much. What do you think about your cousin taking care of a little Russian peasant? You will probably think me the most foolish of all to befriend such a child. I know Mama will not be happy, not the way she feels about everything Russian. Oh, I must figure out a way to explain to her when she comes to visit. Oh, Tova, how I hope she comes to visit soon. Shalom, Rifka.